How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto sent to the Ninja Turtles world and got harem. Part 1. Huge shout out to Namikaze09 for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, and son of the Kairoi Senku and late Yondaime Hokage Minato Namikaze, and the Akarashi Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, was currently in a one-tailed state of the Kyuubi's cloak, with a purple Rasengan in his right hand, glaring at Sasuke Uchiha, who was in his second cursed seal form, with a black Chidori in his left hand. The Uchiha was cackling like a lunatic when he stared at Naruto with his fully matured Sharingan. Soon I'll have the ultimate power and with it I'll kill my brother. Feel honored that your death would bring me one step closer to getting stronger. He said while the blonde growled at him. I have no other choice, I have to kill Sasuke, sorry Sakura, but he's not coming back to the village alive. He thought as his Rasengan grew bigger. After the two finished powering up, they leaped at each other with their signature techniques ready. Chidori. Rasengan. The two cried out as their attacks clashed against each other and created a huge shockwave that was when a dome of black chakra closed around them as they struggled to beat the other with their attack. Naruto saw the maniacal look in Sasuke's eyes. Damn it, dog, just die already. No one cares about you. You're a loser and a weakling. Die, you worthless fool. Die so that I can gain the ultimate power. He roared out as he added more chakra into his Chidori. The only one who's gonna die, Sasuke. He says while a second tail grows from the cloak. Is you. He roared out as his Rasengan grew stronger and destroyed Sasuke's Chidori and tore through his hand and arm, sending blood, flesh and bone in different directions. Sasuke had a look of horror on his face as Naruto's technique beat his and tore through his arm. Before the Uchiha had a chance to even scream out in pain, the spiraling sphere tore through his shoulder and it was slammed into the left side of his head. It ripped through his skull and turned his brain into mush. Piece of skull, blood, and brain matter came flying out. His eye was destroyed in the process, and the last thing Sasuke saw with his single Sharingan eye was Naruto's emotionless expression, which showed no remorse in killing the traitor, and then that eye along with the top of his skull was destroyed. Little did the blonde know that by doing this, a small tear in the fabric of time appears. The chakra dome shatters and was in the form of a dome of light, and Sasuke's decapitated body was sent flying out of the dome and into the river, and his body sunk to the bottom of the river, and with leaving Itachi Uchiha as the last male of the clan. The cloak receded and Naruto's face returned to normal, however the tear became bigger and the suction started to pull the frightened blonde into the void. Naruto was suddenly sucked into it and the vortex closed. Mindscape. Kyuubi no Yoko, the queen of the Makai realm and strongest of the Bijuu's eyes widened in shock and horror when she felt the huge amount of pain that was emitting from her vessel's body. She trembles in pain as the pain increased. Damn it. The kid got sucked into a dimensional vortex. There's no telling where he'll end up. If we survive, that is. She says and cries out as the pain affects her more. There was only one thing she could think of that'll save both his and her life. Sorry kid. But in order for us to survive, I'll have to turn you into the very thing your kind fear and loathe. She says in a tone full of remorse and regret. Her body glows red and she sends a large amount of chakra into the seal, which glows and absorbs half of her yoki and her power. Vortex. Pain. That was all Naruto felt was pain. His body felt like it was being ripped apart and pulled into different directions. The pain was unbearable and tears fell from his eyes since he couldn't take it anymore. He let out an ear-piercing scream as well a light surrounded him and his body. Lap of the gods. In another realm, inside a temple that is surrounded by a dragon made of stone. 4 shadowy figures were sitting on their thrones inside of the temple. They are the Ninja Tribunal. They were each wearing different colored cloaks and helmets, Utram Shredder's helmet. The one wearing the silver blue cape and helmet silver glowing eyes widen as he felt a powerful presence enter their domain. Did you all feel that? Someone has entered our realm and the power, it's amazing yet terrifying. It reminds me of our former ally. He said as he looked at the other 3 and the one wearing a forest green cape and helmet spoke. Yes, we did, Khan. What kind of being holds such power? She asks. That was when the one wearing the blue cape and helmet spoke up. Whoever it is, this person needs to be brought here. We need to know if he is a threat or not. He says. He snaps his fingers and 4 tall figures wearing samurai robes with armor and white masks that had 4 holes on each side appear. They were the Makise no Bushes. Find the source of that power and bring it back to the monastery. He orders. The wooden warriors bow and vanish from their presence. Meanwhile, a red and yellowish-orange comet was seen soaring through the sky and into the mountains. It then crashes into the ground, creating a large crater. When the smoke clears, it reveals a bruised and bloody Naruto whose shirt, jacket, and sandals were now gone, and he was lying on the ground face first. In his stretched out right arm is his headband, and the cloth was torn and burned. Naruto remains motionless, but then coughs up some blood and his body stills. He slowly opens his eyes only to see four tall figures stare down at him. He closes his eyes once again when they land near him, and one of them picks him up and places his body over his shoulders. The wooden men then head back to the lap of the gods. 5 hours later. Naruto was currently in a room lying in a bed healing and unconscious with his chest, torso, arms, and legs bandaged up and wore a crimson robe. His breathing was slow. During the process when QB turned him into a Hanyo, his body changed. He grew from 4'9" to 5'5" and gained some form of muscle on his body. His whisker marks were feral and he had canines jutting from his upper lip. His hair also grew a little longer and his nails were a little longer than normal. His breathing was slow and steady, but he was healing. In the tribunal throne room, the 4 tribunal ninja were sitting in their thrones discussing about the boy's current appearance. So the source of that power came from the boy. How can a mere human hold such destructive power? One voice asks and the other one speaks up. He is more than a mere human judo. It appears that he contains some sort of creature in his being. Its powers rival our own, and from the energy I sensed from the boy it is demonic. Khan answers, making the other's eyes widen in surprise. Demonic? So the demon is in possession of the boy's body? The feminine voice asks. Khan shakes his head at her question. No, Chikara. Apparently a seal of some sort keeps the demon from influencing his mind, however it somehow converted the demon's energy and power into the boy's and made him into a half-breed. Khan answers and Judo speaks up. The Hanyo? Such species are considered an abomination to both of their races and it's rare to even encounter one. The boy is no threat, but if left unchecked, he could become even more dangerous than him. He states while the others think about it. He could become our greatest ally or our worst enemy. Chikara says and Khan closes his eyes for a moment but then opens them. Interesting. He comes from a world of ninja who use the same arts we do but at a lesser extent. He is also what is known in that world as a Jinchuriki or someone who has a demon sealed into them when they are infants. He closes his eyes again and dwells into Naruto's mind to find out more about his life. He sees flashbacks of how Naruto's life was when he was younger. He was shunned, beaten and tortured by mobs, kicked out of stores, and the adults kept their children away from him, stating that he was a monster, but despite all of that he kept pushing himself to prove to everyone that he wasn't what they thought he was. After that, Khan's eyes snapped open, getting the attention of the other 3. So that's the life of Jinchuriki. To experience that kind of life and still keep his sanity. He must have a strong will and spirit to withstand all of that. Most humans would lose their sanity to such a life. He says and they pause to make their decision. We could train the boy in our ways of the ninja. Izomi says and the other 3 look at him. It would be in our best interest to train the boy and have him as an ally. He can also help us find the 4 chosen ones. Chikara says while the others nod. Then it's settled, we will teach him our way of the ninja. Judo says and the 3 nod. Recovery room. Naruto slowly opens his eyes while groaning. His vision is hazy for a few seconds and when it clears, he finds himself in a room, but it wasn't a hospital room. What the? Where am I? The last thing I remember was killing the team with a Rasengan to the skull and then seeing a flash of light. After that I saw some weird dark figures coming towards me. I thought it was those Akatsuki guys. He mumbles as he sat up. He looked down and saw that he was bandaged up and wearing a crimson robe. He looks around and blinks while scratching the back of his head. He then gets out of the bed and walks towards the door and opens it. He pokes his head out and looks around blinking a few times. Naruto starts to walk out of the room and that was when Amakuse no Bushi appears in front of him, causing Naruto to scream and fall on his butt. Oh holy, Naruto says with his eyes bulging out and pointing a finger at the wooden warrior. It stretches his hand out as a gesture to help Naruto up. The blonde blinks for a few moments but then realizes that it wants to help him up. Naruto takes his hands and the masked Bushi helps him up. Thanks he. Naruto says while grinning sheepishly and rubbing the back of his head. The Bushi nods and then turns around and does a hand gesture to follow it. Naruto blinks and follows the wooden being through the hallways. He looks around and sees statues of warriors wearing armor and helmets and some who seemed to be foreign and had what looked like a different variety of animals beside them. Naruto and the Bushi made it to a chamber that was surrounded by darkness and it motions Naruto to move forward. Naruto does while the Bushi stays back. When Naruto walks into the dark room the door slams shut, shocking and scaring the blonde. Oh okay, what the hell is going on? He asks while looking around in the darkness. That was when a 4 pair of different colored eyes shine in the darkness and stare at the frightened blonde. Then the torches in the room light up, clearing the darkness. The 4 figures each wore different colored armor and capes and were sitting in their thrones while one of them was empty. Naruto gulped as he looked at the menacing figures. Greetings young one and welcome to the lap of the gods. Said Khan. Who are you for and what is the lap of the gods? I didn't know a place like this existed in the elemental countries. He asks, and that was when Judo spoke up. We are the Ninja Tribunal, masters in the mystical arts of ninjutsu, and so that you know this place is not a part of the elemental countries, and also you are no longer in that realm. Judo states, making Naruto's eyes widen. I'm not. He asks, and Chikara shakes her head. No, you are not. You came here through a rip in time and ended up in our dimension. She explained, and Naruto was speechless. He was in a different world, and to top it off, he can't go back to his world. So I can never go back home. Great. Just great. He says, looking down at the floor. I'll never see Ba-chan, Ni-chan, old man Ichiraku and Ayan Ni-chan, or my other friends ever again. He thought. All is not lost, young one. We would like to make you an offer and give you a chance to start a new life. Judo says, and Naruto looks up at them. What kind of offer? He asks, and Chikara speaks up. In your world, their knowledge in the ninjutsu arts are similar to ours, but we can use the mystic arts to its fullest. We would like to train you in learning the true power of the arts. She says, and Naruto had a shocked expression on his face. Really? But why me? He asks. We have seen what your life was like in your world. To go through such an horrific experience like that takes a very powerful will and spirit. Most people like you would lose their sanity. Hizomi answers. You have a hidden potential in you that if awakened, could become if not on par with our abilities. Kan said as Naruto's eyes widen. There is a great evil in this world that will awaken one day and wreak havoc, destroying everything in its path. This being of destruction possesses powers that are equal to ours and must be destroyed. So tell us, young one. Do you wish to study under us and save this world from utter chaos? Chikara asks, and Naruto thinks about it. Not only would he get training from the most powerful ninja in this world, but he'll get to start a new life without the glares, hatred, and insults. Not only that, he'll get to save an entirely different world from a great evil. I accept your offer in training, Shishos. Naruto says as he gets on his knees and bows his head as a sign of respect. The four former dragons smile under their helmets and they stand up. Excellent. Now rise, young one. Kan says, and Naruto stands up. Now we'll introduce ourselves to you. An says, and he grabs the hem of his cloak and instantly removes them, revealing a man with silver spiky hair that was in a ponytail. He was tall and slim with a slightly pale complexion. He had glowing silver eyes, and he wore ancient ninja clothes and armor. I am Kan Shisho, ninjutsu master of spirits. He states. That was when Judo removed his cape and helmet, revealing a man wearing a battle kimono that had long sleeves, a Japanese hat with a foot symbol on it, with his black hair sticking out of it, and he had glowing blue eyes with red and white war paint on his face. I am Judo Shisho, ninjutsu master of weapons. He says. Chikara was the next to remove her helmet and cape, revealing a woman who wore a green ninja guy that showed off her legs, which were wrapped in bandages. She also wore a green fishnet shirt underneath with a red sash that held her outfit in place. She also had long white hair that was tied into a ponytail and one braid on each side of her head, and her eyes glowed green. I am Chikara Shisho, ninjutsu master of strength. She says, and Hizomi, the last one, removes his helmet and cloak, revealing a large bulky bald man who wore a sleeveless brownish gold ninja guy with a fishnet shirt under it and had brown bandages wrapped around his muscular arms and legs and wore a pair of Jetta sandals. His eyes glowed yellow and he had yellow markings on his face, and wrapped around his waist were large golden prayer beads. And I am Hizomi, ninjutsu master of stealth. He says, and Naruto looks at them with wide eyes. We were once women during our life but traveled across the globe learning about the mystic arts from other masters. When we completed our training we went from being human to forces of nature. Kan says. But before we begin your training. He then vanishes and appears before Naruto, who jumped back a little and got nervous when Kan narrowed his eyes at the boy. He stretches his arm out and Naruto's entire body glows and the robe and bandages are replaced with a red and black ninja guy. Naruto looks at his new outfit and Kan speaks up once again. Show me the seal on your body, young one. Kan says. Sure, Kan Shisho. Naruto said and pulls the top of his guy down and on his torso, a seal appears. Kan kneels and looks at the seal while rubbing his chin in thought until a smirk appears on his face. Incredible. This Huinjutsu is a true work of art. I've never in my life seen something so complex and powerful. Whoever created this was a true master in the ninja arts. He then performs a series of hand seals and stops at the seal for Seru, monkey, and his hands glow. Hold still, young one. He says as he rears his right hand back, and before Naruto could say anything, Kan slammed his hand into his torso and Naruto gasps out in pain and feels his body jerk forward when Kan pulls his hand out but has something red in his grasp. He manages to pull it all the way out and Naruto collapses on his knees while panting hard. You could have warned when you did thaw, wait, you freed the QB. He cried, and the red bundle of fur that was the size of a kid sat up and shook its head and then stretched its body. Its 9 tails flailed around and it looked around to see 4 strange humans and the blonde. "Hey kid," she said until Naruto pointed at her. "KQB," he says as he points at her while she blinks and tilts her head. "What?" she asks. "Why do you look so puny?" he asks with a grin on his face and a tick mark appears on her face. "Because we're in a monastery, Yubaka," she yelled, making him kneel and hold his ears in pain. "You didn't have to yell," he mutters as the others watch this in silence. "I'll stop yelling when you start using that organ you have in your head called a brain, you stupid monkey," she growled and a tick mark appears on his head when he glares down at QB. "I'm not stupid, you plushie," he yells and she growls back at him. "Plushie. Do you know who I am, brat?" she yelled while he growled back. "Don't even get me started, furball. You are the great and powerful QB no Kitsune," he says as he waved his hands in the air, mocking her. "Don't mock me, monkey," she said, performing the big demon head jutsu. "I'm not a monkey, you miniature shag rug," he says, doing the same. Shag rug, shag rug. "How dare you compare me to a piece of furniture, you hairless ape," she roared. "I'm not hairless, Fuzzy. I have hair on my head. Are you stupid? The only one stupid here is you. At least my race has opposable thumbs," he says with a smirk on his face and steam comes out of her ears. "Shut up," she mumbles, and that was when Khan coughs to get their attention. "As interesting as your squabble is, we need to deal with more important matters. QB," he starts to say until the vixen spoke up. "I have a name, you know. It's Natsumi. QB is just a title," she says, and Naruto blinks. "Natsumi? But that's a female's." "Nah, wait a minute. You're a vixen. And you didn't tell me this, why?" he asks, and she shrugs at him. "It wasn't important at the time," she says, and his brow twitches. "But what is important is about your new condition," she says, and Naruto blinks at her. "New condition? What are you talking about?" he asks. Natsumi sighs and then glows red. Her glowing form went from a fox-like form to a human-like form. When the glow stops, QB had the appearance of a 16-year-old with fox ears and 9 tails swaying behind her. She had long crimson hair that was tied into a ponytail, red slitted eyes and canines, and wore a blood-red battle kimono. Naruto's eyes widen in shock when he sees her hybrid form, and a smirk appears on her face. "Stop checking me out, pervert," she said in a teasing tone, and Naruto looks the other way while she snickers. "All joking aside, Naruto, I have to tell you about your new condition," she said in a serious tone while he looks at her and blinks. "My new condition? What are you talking about?" he asks, and she lets out a sigh. "Do you remember when you were being sucked into that vortex after you killed the uchiha?" she asks, and Naruto nods. Natsumi lets out a frustrating sigh and looks him dead in the eye. "You see, Naruto, while we were going through the vortex, your body was being destroyed at the molecular level and it couldn't handle the strain," she explains while his eyes widen. "If that's true, then how did I survive?" he asks. "When I was inside the seal, I was also feeling the same pain you did, and I too would have died, but I did the one thing that would save our lives. I forced my yakai as well as my blood and powers into the seal. You see, Naruto, the Shiki Fuin was meant to convert my chakra and power into your being and send me back to the Makai realm. However, my actions altered its abilities and instead did something completely different." She then paused for a few seconds and looked away from Naruto. "What did you do to the seal, Natsumi?" he asks. She sighs and looks back at him. "You have to understand, Naruto, I had no other choice but to do this, otherwise you and I would have been ripped apart when we got sucked in the vortex and wouldn't have made it out. I turned you into a Hanyu. You are now half human and half demon," she says, and looks down at the ground and closes her eyes, waiting for him to yell and berate her for her actions. Naruto stood there and just stared at her for a few moments. He then lets out a sigh and walks towards Natsumi. He then does the one thing she thought he'd never do because of how terrible she made his life. He hugs her. She opens her eyes in shock and see him hugging her, the QB no Kitsune. "Well, what are you doing?" she asks, and Naruto looks up at her. "I'm thanking you, Natsumi," he answers, and her eyes become normal. "You're not mad?" she asks, and he shakes his head. Would I be mad? You saved my life, and despite being a Hanyu, I am glad you did it. Thanks, Natsumi-chan," he says and hugs her even tighter. Natsumi smiles and hugs him back. "You're welcome, Naruto-kun," she replies, and they let go of each other, and he looks back at the others. "So Shishos, when does my training start?" Naruto asks with a smile on his face. The Ninja Tribunal smirk at him. "We shall start soon, young one, but first you must meet the 2 people that brought you into the world. Your parents." Han says and starts to glow perform a long series of seals while chanting. That was when a white vortex opened and then 2 flaming orbs appeared. One was yellow and the other one was red. They then appear next to Khan. The red one was near his left and the yellow one was near his right. Khan finished chanting and the glow faded from his body. The orbs then took on human forms. The yellow one was male and the red one was female. The glows died down, and a male and female appeared with their eyes closed but had an aura outline around their bodies. The male was 6'1" and had long wild spiky hair that stopped to his shoulders. He wore a Konoha Jounin outfit and a white cape that had red flames licking the bottom and the kanji yellow flash and Yondaime Hokage on the back of it. He was Minato Namikaze. The woman was 5'7" and had an hourglass figure. She wore a red and black outfit with black shinobi sandals and a katana strapped to her back. She had long smooth red hair and a heart-shaped face. She was Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. The two lovers then opened their eye and looked around. What the? Minato-kun. I thought you were in the Shinigami's stomach. Kushina asks as he looks back at her. So did I, where are we? He wonders and they see Kon and the other tribunal ninja. Who are you for and why did you bring us here? He asks Kon, who speaks. We are the Ninja Tribunal, Minato Namikaze. If you are wondering, then no, we are not in the place you call the elemental nations. You are both in a different world and it was I who summoned your spirits here. He answers. They both blink and look at the man. But why would you summon us here? Kushina asks and Kon smirks while folding his arms. Don't you want to have a reunion with your son? I do believe his name is Naruto Uzumaki, or in other terms, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He answered and their eyes widen in shock. Minato looks down to see Naruto, who was looking at them in with wide eyes. In his eyes, however, different emotions went through. They were surprise, happiness, sadness, and anger. His hands were trembling and his eye became glassy. Sachi. Kushina said in a quiet voice. Minato looked down at his son with a smile on his face. Hey Sachi, I oomph. He suddenly found himself hunched over when Naruto gave him a right hook into the gut, surprising him, Kushina, and Natsumi. Ouch. She said as Minato was on his knees clutching the area Naruto hit. You bastard. Do you have any idea how terrible you made my life? Do you know how much crap I had to deal with because of your actions? Why did you do that to me? How could you seal the QB in your own son and leave him with nothing? Tell me. Why did you leave me all alone? He screamed out and tears fell non-stop from his face. Minato looked up at his sobbing and trembling son. Sorrow, sadness, and regret were on his face. He slowly stood up and walked towards his emotional son and pulls him into a hug. Naruto freezes at the hug, but then he sobs some more into his father's Jonin vest, letting out every emotion. Why? Why did you do this to me? Didn't you love me? Why would you condemn your only son to a life of hell? He muffled out, causing Minato's heart to break, and hugged his son even tighter. Naruto, my son, I loved you more than anything, and the last thing I ever wanted to do is harm you. If I had found another way to seal QB into you, then I would have done it without hesitation, but sadly I couldn't. As a leader, I had to put the lives of many above my own. I'm sorry I gave you that burden, Naruto, but I had no choice. It tore me apart when I realized that I'd have to seal QB into you. Naruto looks up at his father and saw the looks of regret and sorrow that was in his eyes. I know you can never forgive me for that, Naruto, but I want you to know that I love you no matter what, and I'm proud of how strong you are. He says and ends the hug. Now there's someone else who wants to see you. Say hello to your Ka-san. He says with a grin on his face. My Ka-sa, he starts to say until he is pulled into a bone-crushing hug by a woman with red hair and grayish-blue eyes. Sachi. Kushina cries and she bawls her eyes out, not realizing that Naruto was waving his arms around because he couldn't breathe. Minato's sweat drops at this and speaks up. Kushina-chan, if you let Naruto breathe then he'll pass out. He says, and she looks at him blinking a few times and then looks down at her pale son. She pulls him away to see his pale face and swirls in eyes. Oops. She says as his color returns and he breathes. Naruto looks back at his mother and a small smile appears on his face. Hey Ka-san. He says and she smiles back. Hey Sachi. Look at you. You're as handsome as your two-san. She says and he blushes in embarrassment. I bet you're beating the girls off you. She states and Naruto frowns. No. They were too busy chasing the Uchiha prick. He says and they look at him wondering what he was talking about. So Naruto explains what his life was like in Konoha, and after he finished, both Minato and Kushina were pissed. If I ever find a way to return to life, I'm gonna kill those fools, the Uchiha, and beat the crap out of Jiraiya. Minato growls until Naruto speaks up. Well, Two-san, if you must know, I killed the team before I got here. I shoved a Rasengan through his arm and skull. I'm willing to bet those Bakas on the council and that stupid snake are pissed at losing the last loyal Uchiha. He says with a smug look on his face, and Minato and Kushina snicker. Well, that's good, son. I always hated the Uchihas. He says you and me both Yondaime. Though I wish I had killed that bastard Madara for using me like a pet. Natsumi says, and Minato and Kushina look at her. Who are you? He asks and Natsumi grins. You forgot about me, Yondaime? I'm hurt. We fought 12 years ago. I have to say, for a human you put up one heck of a fight. She says, chuckling while Minato's and Kushina's eyes widen in horror. QP. How did you get out of the seal? He asks demands. Natsumi points to Kon and Minato glares at the man. Do you realize what you have done? He says and narrows his eyes at the man. Kon just smirks at him. Yes. I rid your son of his burden, and before you retort Namikaze-sen, I along with the other 4 are capable of dealing with Natsumi. Just like her, we are forces of nature. He says and their eyes widen. They look at Kon, who nods in agreement. But wait. How did Naruto end up here? Kushina asks, and Kon Natsumi explains the event with Naruto and Sasuke's attacks collide, and Naruto killed Sasuke, but the colliding powers caused a tear in the time-space continuum to open and suck him in. She also tells them that Naruto would have died if she hadn't forced her power into the seal, causing its effect to reverse and turn him into a Hanyu. Both Minato and Kushina had shocked looks on their faces, and they looked back at Naruto, who was looking at the ground, thinking that they would hate him now. Kushina snapped out of her shock and pulled him into a hug. It's okay, Naruto-kun. We don't hate you because of your new condition. He looks up at her to the reassuring smile on her face, and the same with Minato, who smiled back. Thanks Ka-san, Tu-san. I was afraid that you'd be like the villagers from Konoha. He says, and they frown at that. That was when Kon spoke up. Minato-san, Kushina-san, while I did summon you from a spirit realm, but you have a limit to be in this plane. You'll both have to go back to heaven. He says, and their eyes widen. Minato tried to speak up until Kon interrupted him. You don't have to worry about the Shinigami. You have served your time with him and he's allowing you to join your wife in heaven. Kon says, and he nods. I see. He says. So you guys have to go already? He asks in a downcast voice. A sad smile appears on Minato's face and he pats Naruto on the head. Seems like a kiddo. But hey, don't worry. We'll be watching you. But before we leave, I have a few gifts I left you. Hold out your right arm. He says. Naruto blinks but does it. Minato grabs his arm and mutters Kai while doing a ram seal. Naruto's hand glows and a seal appears on his forearm. A puff of smoke appears and when it disappears, 3 large seals appear on the ground. One was red, the other yellow, and the last one green. I placed those scrolls in a blood seal on your arm before I went to seal Natsumi and you. The red and yellow scroll contains each of our clan's techniques, fighting styles, and weapons. The green one is the forbidden scroll I created and it also contains our clan's valuables. He said with a smile on his face, and Naruto's eyes widen as he looked at the scrolls and back at his parents. Another thing I left in the green scroll are some books on Fuinjutsu and a dozen of my customized coats and the kunai that gave me the title Kairoi Senku. He says as he points to his white coat and Naruto's eyes were watery. Like father like son, right kiddo? I mean, the coat does look cool, right? Minato asks with a large grin on his face, only for Naruto to tackle him into a hug while saying thank you over and over. Minato chuckles at this and pats his son on the back. He lets go of him and Kushina smiles at her son. Sachi, I left my katana in the red scroll. It's been in my family since the clan wars and I'm passing it on to you. We come from a clan of swordsmen and water users and I also left you my whirlpool headband. She says as she hugs him and kisses him on the forehead. One more thing, son. He then places his index and middle finger on Naruto's forehead and they glow yellow for a while. It then fades and Naruto rubs it with a look of confusion. What did you do to me, Tu-san? Naruto asks and Minato smirks. Oh, I just passed on my knowledge on Fuinjutsu into your mind. Trust me when I say that the Hiraishin is a very complex and difficult technique to create and master. But I know you can do it. He says and Naruto grins. Thanks. I also mastered the Rasengan in a week when I went to train with Hiro Sennin. He states and their eyes bulge. What? You completed the Rasengan in a week? He asks and Naruto holds out his right hand and creates a spinning ball in his hands. I guess I did inherit your talent after all, Dad. He says. Minato then laughs out and then wipes a tear from his eye. I guess you did. He says. It's time. Kon says. Minato and Kushina look at him and nod and then look back at Naruto. Well, this is it. Goodbye, son, and good luck. Make me and your mother proud. He says and Naruto nods. He then looks at Natsumi. Natsumi, thank you for saving my son's life. You have proven that not all demons are bad. He says and she snorts while she crosses her arms. Thanks for the compliment, Ninja, and don't worry about your son. I'll make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. She says and smiles at the hey she heard from Naruto. Naruto, you take care of yourself. And once you're old enough, be sure to have lots of grandkids. She says with a cheeky grin on her face and he blushes and nods. They then transform into their astral projection form and then a flash of white light appears and they suddenly vanish. Naruto looks at the spot they were once in and a sad smile appears on his face. Goodbye, Ka-san, Tu-san, enjoy your life in heaven. He says. Now then, young one, are you ready for your training? Know this, that it will not be easy. We will work you to the ground and show no mercy. Do you still want to do this? Chikara asks. Naruto looks up at them and a smirk appears on his face. Bring it on, Shishos. I won't back down from your training. Do your worst. If I could deal with a place like Konoha, then I can deal with whatever you throw at me. He says as his eyes showed a strong will and spirit inside his body. The tribunal look at Naruto and were inwardly smirking and thinking that they have chosen the right ninja to pass their arts to. Very well. Your training begins now. Judo says as an aura surround their bodies. Natsumi had only one thought in her mind. This is gonna be fun. For me, that is. She says while chuckling. Outside the castle, Naruto was currently doing a set of push-ups with a small puddle of sweat growing under him. Sitting on his back in the lotus position was Natsumi sipping on green tea. 291, 292, 293, 294, 295, 296, 297, 298, 299, 300. He cried out and his arms were trembling from the weight and sweating more. I want 100 more push-ups, Naruto. She says while sipping on her tea some more. Damn it, Natsumi-sensei, I've been doing push-ups for the last hour. Can I please take a break? I'm only asking for 10 minutes. He begged, but she does a ram seal and doubles the weight on the gravity seal he has on his body. Naruto's body nearly collapsed from the force but caught himself. No, and for complaining, I want 200 push-ups. She says while the blonde's eye twitched like crazy and in his mind he was screaming out curse words that would make a sailor blush. Natsumi chuckled and continued to sip her tea while listening to the incoherent words he was spewing from his mindscape. Han, Judo, Chikara and his Omi were watching this from the castle roof. I must say. Natsumi's form of training is a little unorthodox and sadistic. Khan says while Chikara smirks. Perhaps, but her training will prepare him for ours. He has a long way to go before he is ready to face the threats of the world. She stated. Judo met and rubbed his chin and thought. While Natsumi-san is a demon, she too is a force of nature like us, but she comes from his world and unlike us who had to train to gain our power, she was born a being made of power. He said. Indeed. If we had fought her when we were merely human, we would stand no chance against her. From the history I read on Natsumi, it was stated that she is a natural disaster that only appears where untold amounts of human malice festers and wipes it from existence. With one swing of a single tail she could create tsunamis, split mountains, and create other natural disasters. She is power incarnate. Hizomi explained. That was when Khan spoke up. For a demon she doesn't seem to be evil or have any ill intent towards us. I guess even a demon can have a heart just like humans can. It's a shame our former comrade gave up his heart over the powers of darkness. He said while the others nodded and continued to watch Naruto do his push-up. Said felt like his body was gonna get crushed under the pressure of the gravity seal Natsumi put on him. 495, 496, 497, 498, 499, 500. He said and then he collapsed and breathed heavily. Natsumi was still sitting on his back and finished sipping her tea and noticed Naruto was finished. Done already? Well, that was quick. She says and hovers in the air and off his aching body. Maybe I should have let you get used to your new body before starting on your tour, I mean training. Oh well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? She asks with a cheeky grin on her face. Naruto's brow twitched and growled. Whoever said that hasn't met you, Natsumi, and if I ever find out who said that, I'll find a way to bring him back to life and kill him just for making that saying. He mutters while she giggles. You know you love me, Naruto-kun. She replied. Yeah, like a bad itch. He said in his thoughts, I heard that, Naruto-kun. She says. Stop reading my thoughts. That's invasion of privacy. He mentally yelled, but then he passed out. Natsumi stood on her feet, picked up Naruto and hoisted her former container over her shoulders and on her back. The tribunal ninjas appear before Natsumi looking at Naruto. It appears that our student has overexerted himself with your training, Natsumi-san. Judo states while she shrugs. He'll live, Judo-san. Since he's half demon he'll recover faster. I must say though he impressed me with how far he got the first day of his training. Natsumi says while the other four nod. How long will it take for him to complete your training? Chikara asks. 1 year give or take, but with his ability to create a large number of shadow clones, it should take him half a year. She answered, causing Khan to raise an eyebrow wanting an explanation. The shadow clone jutsu has the ability to pass on its knowledge to the original after being destroyed. He has to learn ninjutsu, gainjutsu, tojutsu, kinjutsu, fuinjutsu, and senjutsu. It would normally take a human half of her life to complete his or her training in said arts, but with Naruto and his energy capacity, he can complete these forms in less than a few years, with the minimum being 4 or 5. She answered. Khan, Judo, Chikara and Hizomi's eyes widen at the thought. That is an interesting technique, but I'm sure there is a drawback to it. Khan said, getting a nod from Natsumi. Yes. Dispelling them all at once could cause mental trauma or knowledge overload, since the human brain can only absorb so much info. She explained, and the Master of Spirits nodded. Luckily he'll finish the training in the ninja arts in a year, to say the least. Afterwards we can teach him our form of the ninja arts. Chikara says. Since time in our realm is slower than the time in the mortal plane, he'll have plenty of time to master his skills. Natsumi looks at Naruto, who was now groaning, and chuckles. Will he be okay? Chikara asks and Natsumi nods. Oh, don't worry, this kid will train till he passes out. Even when he was fully human, he never knew when to quit. You can knock him down all you want, but he keeps coming back for more. Trust me, by tomorrow he'll be as good as new. She says while fire surrounds her and Naruto and shunshuns away. Naruto's room. Naruto was laying on a bed and groaning as his muscles twitched and his body was in pain but slowly healing. He was out of his torn guy and wearing a pair of blue PJ pants with no shirt. Oh Kami, I feel like someone dropped a tent on boulder on my body. He moaned. Natsumi was wearing a long red shirt that stopped above her knees and had her hair hanging down and it stopped to the middle of her back. She just giggled at how Naruto looked and couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Oh, you poor thing. Do you want me to make you feel better? She asks, pretending to act like she's sorry. Please don't joke around, Natsumi. He mumbled as he turned his head on the pillow while she huffs up and lays down on her stomach in front of his face while she wagged her tails and rests her head on her arms. You think that was tough? Just wait till tomorrow, Foxy. She said with a grin on her face, making Naruto glare at her. Sadist. He mutters while she ruffles his hair with her hand. Oh, don't be like that, Naruto-kun. I may be sadist, but I'm not cruel. You want to be strong, right? Just think. When your training is complete with me and the others, you'll make the other Kages from that village look like a joke. Hell, you'll be able to fight on even grounds with me. She said with a grin on her face, making Naruto smile a little. Yeah, too bad I'll never become Hokage. Oh well, if I can't be a Kage then maybe I can be a member of the tribunal. He says while she nods in agreement. I might as well get some sleep for your torture tomorrow. He said with a hint of sarcasm in his voice and she sticks her tongue at him. He then yawns and closes his eyes to fall asleep, as does Natsumi. Morning. Naruto stirs in his sleep and tilts his head a little, only to feel two pillows press against his head and his body felt warmer than it usually does. He hears some light snoring and opens his eyes to see the sleeping form of Natsumi. She had her arms wrapped around him and her tails were wrapped around them both. Naruto's eyes widen and he blushed because his head was resting on her bosom. Okay, this is awkward. He says to himself, and Natsumi's ears twitch and she stirs and yawns, blinking a few times. She looks down and sees a pair of blue eyes looking at her red eyes. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Enjoying the position you're in? She asked while said blonde just gave her a blank stare. You're shameless, you know that. I'm 13 for crying out loud. He stated while she shrugged. Hey, you're a ninja. Old enough to kill, old enough to do adult things like have sex. You don't think I'm sexy, do you? She asks with a pout on her face. Naruto's brow twitched and looks the other way. That may be true, Natsumi, but still I'm not ready to do adult things yet. He answers and she lets him go and huffs while folding her arms over her chest. Fine, spoil sport, ruin my fun. Anyways, get dressed for your morning training. After we eat breakfast I'm gonna teach you how to use both human and demonic illusions. Then we'll see what elements you have using that chakra paper your parents left you in those scrolls. She explained and Naruto blinked. Demonic illusions? He asks and she nodded. Yes. They're a lot stronger and more advanced than the Genjutsu you ninja use. Who do you think taught your kind Genjutsu? Plus, I'm a kitsune and we are master thieves and masters of illusions. She stated. Naruto had a look of awe on his face. Wow. So are they tougher to learn than human-based illusions? Naruto asks and she shakes her head. No. Unlike the human-based ones, demon-based illusions don't require a lot of controller energy. The simplest way to cast them is to hypnotize the target with your eyes or make contact by either touching them or injecting your energy into the target. Plus you create the illusion by only focusing your mental energy and determining what type it would be. I use them so I wouldn't be disturbed or to pull a few pranks. She answered. Naruto blinks at her and smirks. And here I thought you were a big bad demon with an ego the size of Hai no Kuni. He said. A tick mark appears on Natsumi's forehead and growls. Shut up, kid. I am bad. I'm power incarnate. There's not a force in this world that can stand up to me. I'll have you know I used to use that Tanuki Shukaku as a punching bag out of boredom. She stated with her nose in the air and her arms crossed. And yet my dad, who was a puny ninja human, managed to seal you into my gut. He said in a deadpan voice, causing Natsumi to fall on her back with her feet in the air, and Naruto started to laugh out loud and clutch his sides. She stood back up and glared at Naruto with an blush on her face. Shut up. That fight didn't count because I was being controlled by that monkey with the Sharingan. If my mind was conscious I would have sent him flying with a flick of my tail. She yelled while Naruto calmed down and sat up. That fight does count, Natsumi, and you know it. It doesn't matter if you were being controlled or conscious. You lost, accept it and move on with your life. He says, making her pout, and slaps him playfully on the shoulder. Stop being mean to me, you jerk. She mumbled. Always Natsumi-chan pouting? He asks in a childlike voice. No, I'm sulking. Her fox ears move downward also, making her look like a sad puppy. Naruto snickers and pulls her into a hug. Oh, don't cry, Natsu-chan, I'm sorry. He says, and then a sly grin appears on her face. Why, Naruto, I didn't think you would be this forward with me. She said. Naruto blinks in confusion, and he realizes he has his arms wrapped around her bosom. He then jumps back instantly, acting as if she was made of fire. Please don't hurt me, I didn't know I was hugging you like that. He cried out, making her giggle. Oh, relax will you, I was only teasing. Now then go get dressed so we can get you started on your elemental affinity and those demonic illusions. She tells him. Naruto nods and heads into the changing room while Natsumi's clothes materialized into a crimson kunoichi guy. That gaki is so innocent yet easy to tease. That hug was kind of nice though. She thought while a small blush appears on her cheeks and her eyes widen. Oh, don't tell me I'm falling for him. He's a teenager for heaven's sake, but within a few years he'll be a major heartache to the female population. Who knows? I might consider making him my mate in the future. He has the qualities and traits for one. Not to mention he's fun to be around with. I'll just wait and see how far we go before I think about having a relationship with him. She thought and saw Naruto leave the changing room, wearing a blue ninja guy. During most of the morning, Natsumi helped Naruto in using Onigane Jutsu. He could cast them effectively due to being half kitsune. He even created one that could be used for interrogation and making the victim believe he was being tortured. There was also one that would make him invisible and blend in with his surroundings. Right now, Naruto was sitting on his bed in a room reading a book that was in his father's scroll about beginning sealing. He had to admit, Fuinjutsu was an interesting yet complex art that very few learned. I'll have to thank Dad for giving me his knowledge on Fuinjutsu. This stuff is amazing. And to think he managed to create something as powerful as the Hiraishin. He thought. One of the tri-pronged kunai knives were sitting next to him and he picked one up, looking at the insignia seals on it. I have a long way to go before I can use them. I'll make you both proud too, San, Ka-san. He said and lays the kunai down, returning to his reading. It took him 2 hours and 50 minutes to finish the book in beginning sealing. He shuts the books and lets out a sigh of relief. Phew. Man, oh man, learning Fuinjutsu is tough. I might as well have the shadow clones read the other books. He then does a cross seal. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. He mutters and 3 clones pop out. Okay, I need you 3 to read these books on sealing. He says, getting a nod from them. The clones grab a book and start to read. Naruto gets off his feet and stretches and heads out into the Zen garden. He walks around the beautiful garden only to see Kon meditating and floating in the air in the lotus position with his eyes closed. Naruto watches him for a while and was about to go look for Natsumi until the man spoke up. Where are you going, young one? Kon asks without looking at the blonde. Naruto rubs the back of his head, smiling sheepishly. Oh hey Kon-sensei, I was just gonna go look for Natsumi to see if she'll teach me about my elemental affinities. He explained. Kon floated down onto the ground in the same position. Before you do, come and sit for a moment. Naruto blinks but nods and walks over to Kon and sits next to him. So Kon-sensei, where are the others? He asks his sensei. The master of spirits opens his eyes and looks at Naruto. Gaara is up in the mountains training. Judo is forging weapons and Hizomi is in the temple meditating. He explained, getting an O from the blonde. Now then. Tell me about these Kages that ruled in your dimension. He says. Naruto blinks for a while and nods. Well, you see, Kon-sensei, the Kage is the leader of his or her village and is the commanding officer of many ninja. They are also the strongest ninja in the village. He explained. Kon nodded when he got the explanation. The 5 main elements represented the major countries of the elemental nations. They are Hai no Kuni, Mizu no Kuni, Tsuchi no Kuni, Kaminari no Kuni, and Kase no Kuni. Each one had a Kage to represent them. They were the Hokage, Mizukage, Tsuchikage, Raikage, and Kazekage. They were in charge of the hidden villages they protected. He said. I see. So it is the strongest ninja who becomes the Kage of the village? Kon asks Naruto, who nods. In a way, yes. I'm from Konohagakure. That's the village my father was the Kage of. He became the Yondaime Hokage after the Third Shinobi War. There was also the Shodaime who was the founder of the village. The Nidaime, the Sandaime who was kind of like my grandfather, and his apprentice Tsunade, who became the Gondaime after he passed on. He said in a solemn voice. Kon took notice of this and opened his eyes. Interesting, and these ninja were able to use an energy called chakra that gave them the ability to use the elements. Naruto nods at this. Yep. We could also do things like walk on trees, stick to walls, and walk on water. Naruto answered. Khan was even more interested now. That's incredible. So this chakra is both physical and spiritual energy that is used to create jutsus, correct? Naruto nods with a grin on his face. Yep, we use hand seals that are based on the 12 animals of the zodiac. They are the tiger, horse, rooster, monkey, pig, rabbit, rat, snake, ox, dog, dragon, and bird. We also had the ability to summon animals we made a contract with. I signed one that was based off the toads. He answered. An couldn't help but be amazed, and a smile appeared on his face. It would seem that the Elemental Nations is an impressive place. Now I believe you have to go meet up with your sensei. Good luck in your training with her, Naruto. He said. Said blonde nods and gets up. Thanks, Khan sensei. I'll see you around. He says and leaps off the rooftops to meet up with Natsumi. That boy is destined for greatness. I can already see it. He says and vanishes in a swirl of silver energy. Natsumi was sleeping under a tree in her hybrid form with her ears and tails twitching slightly. Naruto lands in from her in a crouching position and watches her breath in and out lightly. Naruto snickers at this and reaches his hand out near her right ear and strokes it from behind gently. That was when he heard a purr come from her and she nuzzled her cheek against his hand. Naruto had to bite his bottom lip to stop himself from laughing. He continued to scratch her behind the ear and her purr grew louder. MMMMMM. That feels nice, Naruto-kun. She mumbles. Naruto's face was turning red and was ready to explode. He stops stroking her ear and moves his hand away from her and hears a whimper escape from her mouth. Don't stop, I was enjoying that. She whined. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. A snort escaped from his mouth and he ran away right before Natsumi sat straight up, looking around blinking. Her ears twitched and she tilted her head in confusion. I could have sworn someone was here. She said to herself. Naruto managed to run back into his room and started to laugh his ass off and clutching his sides in pain while tears streamed down his eyes. After doing that for a few minutes, he managed to calm down and stand straight up again. Man, oh man. She sure is a heavy sleeper. He said. Is that so? A feminine yet scary voice said behind him. Naruto pales and turns around only to see Natsumi standing in front of him with her arms crossed and was smiling evilly at him. You can fool those bakas from the village with your pranks but not me. In case you forgot, I'm a kitsune. She said with a dark expression on her face while Naruto started to sweat bullets. A second later her face brightened up. But I let you off with warning since I enjoyed the ear rub you gave me. Next time rub both and stroke one of my tails. She finished with a grin on her face, making Naruto face fault. After that little event, Naruto stood outside with Natsumi in a forest near the monastery. In her hand she held 2 chakra papers. Okay Naruto, I'm gonna explain the elements to you. Each element has a strength and a weakness. As you know, the 5 main elements are fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind. Each element is strong and weak against the other. For example, wind is weak against fire yet strong against lightning. Fire is strong against wind and weak against water. Water is strong against fire and weak against earth. Earth is strong against water and weak against lightning. Lightning is strong against earth yet weak against wind. So you see, each element balances the other out. She explained. Naruto nods at her explanation and speaks up. So what are the element's strong points? I mean, what are they best used for? Naruto asks Natsumi, who does a thinking pose. Simple kid. Fire normally burns and melts whatever it touches, water drowns, earth crushes, lightning pierces, and wind cuts. The most difficult to use is wind due to the fact that it's wild and free. Untamable like you are. She said with a cheeky grin. Naruto was about to nod, but then shouts a hey at her, making her giggle. Aside from the 5 elements, there is also light and darkness, but those elements are rare to gain for humans. There's also the sub-elements wood, ice, lava, blaze, metal, crystal, storm, and chaos. There is also a 6th element called gravity, but that too is rare to gain. She finished explaining. So how many can you use? Naruto asks. Natsumi looks at him and a grin appears on her face. Me? I have all of them minus gravity. She answered. Naruto's eyes were the size of dinner plates and his jaw was on the ground, making her laugh lightly. She gives him one of the chakra papers and he takes it. Now then focus a bit of your chakra into the paper. If it burns it's fire, if it gets wet and soggy it's water, if it turns to dust it's earth, if it crumbles up it's lightning, and if it splits it's wind. She states. Naruto nods at her and focuses a small amount of chakra into the paper. What happens next shocks even Natsumi. The paper split into 4 pieces and became soggy, burned, crumbled, and dissolved. Natsumi and Naruto's eyes were the size of dinner plates at what had happened. I guess you have all 5 element with wind being the strongest. She said, still gobsmacked at what happened. Okay, how the heck do I have all 5 elements? Isn't it impossible for someone to have all 5? He asked the vixen. Yes, it is impossible for any human to have all 5 elements unless you have the transcendent bloodline Rinnegan. It's a possibility that when I turned you into a Hanyu you also gained my elements. She answered. Oh. So there's a chance I can use some of the sub-elements because of my new condition? Naruto asks her. It is possible, but another reason could have been that you gained them when I was sealed in you, and when you became a Hanyu, it made your elemental affinity stronger. She answered. To say Naruto was shocked was an understatement. It's official, I am awesome. He yelled, pumping his fist in the air. Natsumi sweat dropped when he did that. So am I gonna learn some powerful wind jutsu or what? He asks, ready to get started on training with his element. That was until his stomach growled and he blushed in embarrassment. First we get lunch and then we'll start on your elemental training. She says. After they took a break and ate lunch, Natsumi started to teach Naruto how to use wind-based chakra. She started it off by having him try to cut a leaf in half. Said blonde had sweat dripping from his brow when he and 8 clones worked on trying to cut the leaf in half. He was currently on his 12th leaf since the last 11 shredded to pieces. He focused a little more wind chakra into the leaf and watches the leaf start to cut in a perfect segment from the tips. Come on, almost got it, he says quietly when the cut becomes longer. Focus just a little more, and that was when the leaf cut perfectly in half. Yes. I got it. He cries and falls on his bottom. The clones disperse while Naruto wipes the sweat off his head. That was not easy. He said and laid on his back. Natsumi's figure towers over him and she crouches down with a grin her face. Of course, cutting a leaf with wind chakra isn't easy, Naruto-kun. Wind is the most difficult element to control and master. Most users of the element don't even master it in half of their lifetime. You on the other hand can master this a lot faster than the other users due to the fact that you're a Hanyu, and thanks to the Shadow Clone's abilities, you'll get your training done in 2.5 years. I'm also gonna teach you different styles of Taijutsu, Kinjutsu, and Senjutsu, or the sage arts. She said. Naruto had stars in his eyes when he heard what else he'll be learning, but then he had a look of confusion on his face when she said Senjutsu. Wait, what is Senjutsu? He asks while a question mark appeared on his face. Senjutsu, or the sage arts, is a techniques based on sensing and gathering natural energy in the body and blend it in with your own physical and spiritual chakra. It is also called nature chakra, and it must be balanced with your physical and mental chakra in order to use it properly. When you're capable of harnessing it, you achieve a form called sage mode, and with it, your ninjutsu, gainjutsu, and taijutsu become even stronger than ever. She explained. Amazing. But how is sage mode gained? Is it affiliated with a certain energy source or animal? He asks. Natsumi answers him with a nod. Yes, it is, Naruto-kun. The only person I've seen use sage mode was your father and Hashirama Senju. Nature chakra can be affiliated with a certain animal or with nature. Senjutsu isn't easy to learn and it takes a long time to master. I've never actually used it due to the fact I am a force of nature, but I can if I want since I'm affiliated with the kitsunes. Once we complete your other forms of training, I'll teach you how to use it. She says, and once again Naruto's eyes had stars in them. After his training in wind chakra, Naruto and Natsumi took a tea break for 10 minutes and afterwards she helped Naruto work in using his wind chakra. She taught Naruto how to augment his wind chakra through weapons like kunai, shuriken, knives, and katanas in order to increase their cutting power. Afterwards she taught him some Futen jutsu like the Kei's no Yaiba, Datapa, Renkuden, Senpuken, and the Kaimatachi. After learning a few wind jutsu, they started on fire elemental training, and to her amazement, he was able to do a lot faster than with wind. She taught him the Gakyaku, Hasenka, Enden, Ryuka, and Karyuenden. After fire was water. The trick with water was needing a water source and how to shape water using chakra. During this, she taught him Teppadama, the Mizubushin, Mizurappa, Sujinheki, and Suidogen. Next was the earth element, which was easier for him to manipulate. Natsumi taught him Shinju's Anshu, Doryuheki, Doryutaiga, Doryuden, and Tsuchi Bushin. He even learned how to use the earth element with his chakra and make it as hard as steel or soft as clay. Last but not least was lightning. Like wind, lightning was tough for Naruto to use due to the fact that it had to be focused. Lightning could be used to either pierce its target or shock them, and in Naruto's case, he ended up getting electrocuted a lot, much to Natsumi's amusement. She taught him Jian, Kanjikiha, Ikazuchi Hakai, Habana, and Shoujikiha. After spending half the day training with the elements, Naruto was exhausted. Naruto was currently in his room taking a shower, washing the grim and dirt out of his hair. He rears his head back and lets the water run down his hair and body while he looks up at the ceiling. I've been here for 3 months and I'm already in my elemental training. I wonder how Bachan and the others are doing. They'll do fine without me. I need to stop living in the past with them. I'm starting a new life and that's all that matters. There wasn't really that much left for me in that village other than a few people. He thought and lets out a sigh. He turns the knob to the hot and cold water off and walks out of the shower. He grabs one of the towels and wraps one around his waist and grabs the other and uses it to dry his hair and body. Afterwards, he walks out of the bathroom and heads to his dresser drawer and pulls out a blue sleeveless shirt and some black boxers and pulls them on after he pulled the towel off his waist. Finally, he lays back on the bed, letting out a sigh of relief. That was when the door opened and Natsumi poked her head into the room grinning. "Hey Naruto-kun, you hungry? I got sushi and rice balls. Wanna share them with me?" she asks. Naruto does a gesture with his hand telling her to come in. She does that and enters the room wearing the same shirt she wore yesterday with a tray of tea, sushi rolls, and rice balls. She sets the tray on the side and sits next to Naruto's lying form. Said blonde then sits up and sits next to her and stretches his arms before relaxing. Natsumi holds a cup of tea and a rice ball in front of Naruto who takes it. "Thanks," he says and bites into the rice ball and drinks some of the green tea with Natsumi joining him. They eat the food from the tray for a while and when Naruto finishes his third rice ball he speaks up. "Natsumi," said Vixen stops drinking her tea and looks at the blonde Hanyu. "Yes Naruto-kun?" she asks. Naruto rubs the back of his head and speaks up. I just wanna say," he stammers out while she blinks and set her tea down. "Yes," she says while he rubs the back of his head. "I wanna say thank you for everything you've done for me so far," he replies, making her go wide-eyed. "Ever since we got here you've helped me more than anyone else from my former home did. You may not think of it being a lot but it is to me. You've taught me a lot more than my so-called sensei did. For what you have done for me so far I thank you and I'll find a way to pay you back for helping me," he says. Natsumi was speechless. He just thanked her for helping him despite the fact that she was mostly responsible for how his life turned out. A small blush appears on her face and she looks away from him. "You're welcome Naruto-kun. It's the least I could do for how terrible your life was back in that place." She said that was when she felt some weight on her shoulder and looked over only to see Naruto had fallen asleep on her shoulder. She carefully sets his head on her lap and lets him rest there. "You are truly one of a kind Naruto-kun. Going through so much yet you still have your sanity. I've never met someone with a spirit as strong as yours. Your parents would be proud of you." "I know I am," she says as she strokes his blonde hair gently. 2 years have passed since Naruto started his training with Natsumi and he excelled at an amazing level. Thanks to his ability to use shadow clones, the knowledge he gained from his father, along with the scrolls and books his parents left him, he was able to understand every form of the ninja arts. His chakra control was now mid to high Kage level due to the rigorous chakra and physical exercises Natsumi made him do because of the large amounts of chakra he possessed, especially since he also had yokai, but it was a lot easier to control. The genin level exercises were tree walking, advanced tree walking, water walking, and advanced water walking swimming exercise. The Chunin level exercises were the chakra armor, chakra enhanced muscle senses, and chakra pulse technique. The Jonin level exercises were chakra sonar, advanced form of chakra pulse technique, rapid river walking, kunai balancing, and advanced kunai balancing. Finally he also learned and mastered most of the Kage level and beyond exercises, which were waterfall walking, advanced waterfall walking swimming, rapid river walking swimming exercise, senbon balancing, and advanced senbon balancing technique. During his physical training Natsumi increased the weights and gravity seals he had on his person and also him do other physical exercises like rope climbing, mountain climbing, climbing waterfalls, and also had him work on dodging weapons and maneuvering over difficult obstacles. He also excelled well in Taijutsu and learned the 2 fighting styles his parents left him. The Taijutsu fighting style from his father's clan was known as the Senkaken no Ryu, flash fist style. It was a fighting style that was based off the user possessing an unnatural level of speed, aerodynamics, agility, and reflexes, and only those of the Namikaze clan can use it properly. When fully mastered the user would be able to easily evade an opponent's attacks, including those that are point blank. The second Taijutsu style from his mother's clan was called the Ryuchukawa no Ken, flowing river fist. It was a style based of being like the river, calm, relaxing, and unpredictable, since a river can start off being calm and soothing at first, but afterwards can become wild and violent like the raging rapids, and is mostly a defensive style used for disabling, counterattacking, and using an opponent's strength against, but can also be offensive if used at the right moment. Kushina also left Naruto her clan's sword style called the Maretsu Yuzu no Ryu, raging whirlpool technique. This sword style was one of the fiercest styles to ever exist. Like the clan's fighting style, the sword style was based off of performing unpredictable moves that not even a Sharingan or Byakugan wielder can foresee or evade due to the style using a mixture of sword strikes that can strike any vital or non-vital part of the human body. In order to use the style properly, the user has to be well adept in Kenjutsu, and their body must be flexible and be capable of possessing a certain level of speed depending on the gender. Natsumi mostly helped Naruto with his Kenjutsu by teaching him the basics before having him learn his mother's sword style. For Genjutsu, Naruto was at the very least high Anbu level. His strongest Genjutsu was the Kakuanjo no Jutsu, Infinite Darkness technique. His Taijutsu has also improved to the point where he could face Natsumi in a match. His ninjutsu was without a doubt his greatest advantage, and he was a genius in creating his own jutsu. He was highly proficient in using the 5 main elements and sub-elements. He also managed to not only manipulate the chakra-based elements, but also the natural elements themselves. Shape transformation and nature transformation was his toughest challenge, but he managed to pull through and even made different versions of the Rasengan. Out of all the ninja arts, though Fuinjutsu and Jikiken, time-space jutsu was something he took to instantly, just like his parents did. After getting the basics down and understanding the schematics, designs, and the strengths and weaknesses of each seal variety, he managed to get close to his father's level, but still had a long way to go before being a true seal master like he was, and the same went with Jikiken ninjutsu. He learned how to absorb and direct attacks in different locations, as well as found a way to send objects into a pocket dimension and leave them there until he wanted to return them to his dimension. The Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God, was without a doubt the toughest and most complex jutsu Naruto ever had to learn, and the blonde had to admit creating the seal formulas, as well as learning how to use it correctly, was the most challenging thing he's ever had to do. Luckily, Minato left Naruto some blueprints on how to create the formulas and how it operates. It took him quite a while to get the technique down, but in the end he managed to succeed in learning and mastering it. The final thing he learned from Natsumi was Senjutsu, or the Sage Arts. This technique was said to be the most difficult to learn due to the fact that it required the person to gather the natural energy around them and balance his or her physical and spiritual energy with the natural energy he or she gathers from nature. While the process seemed to sound easy, it wasn't, because aside from having a perfect balance of physical, spiritual, and natural energy, the person, while gathering natural energy, must remain absolutely still in order to be one with nature and also needs to possess a large amount of chakra. Senjutsu also required the person to be linked with an animal who has mastered the art to aid them in gathering nature energy, but thanks to Natsumi, he didn't need to use that handicap due to the fact that he was half kitsune. He was capable of gathering nature energy much easier. He is also proficient in using the 5 elements as well as the sub-elements, since he gained Natsumi's ability to use the elements and sub-elements like she was. Right now Naruto was sitting on a boulder in the middle of a river, cross-legged. He was wearing a black sleeveless shirt but did wear a pair of black ninja pants that were rolled up above his ankles and seemed to be wearing black medical tape around his shins, and also wore black medical tape around his hands and forearms like Lee wears his. He let his hair grow out and now it looks similar to his father's, with the difference being that he had red highlights in the jaw-length spiky bangs. His elongated canines also jutted from his upper lip and his whisker marks vanished. He was now 5'9" and had a body was also in physical condition, being built like a professional martial artist, meaning he had for both power and speed. His face was now sharp and chiseled, giving his facial appearance a handsome and slightly feral form, and right now he was working on gathering nature energy. Watching him was Natsumi, who was wearing a long-sleeve crimson ninja guy with black ninja tabi boots, like the ones Ryu and Momiji wear, and shin forearm guards, which are reminiscent of the ancient ninja warrior, and wore a mesh shirt underneath that showed a little cleavage. Holding the outfit together was a black obi sash. When Naruto felt that his nature energy was balanced out with his physical and spiritual energy, his eyes shot open and were now golden with slit pupils and also appeared to have black pigment marks, like the Sage Mode marks, only more jagged and sharper and curved under his eyes. Natsumi's eyes widened when she saw this. He's done it. He's achieved the Kitsune form of Sage Mode. She thought and smiled. You truly are amazing, Naruto-kun. Now to see how long you can keep this form up. Naruto suddenly sensed something heading towards him and turned his head slightly, only to see a house-sized boulder ascend at a mid-accurate speed, so he jumps to his feet and with his right fist beeped back. When the boulder was close enough, Naruto punched the boulder and it shattered instantly, exploding into pebbles, literally. As the boulder pieces landed into the water, Natsumi appeared in front of Naruto with her fist beeped back and swings it at the blonde's face. Naruto instantly sidesteps the punch, grabs her wrist and throws her over his shoulder and sends her flying out into the lake. Natsumi manages to twist her body in midair and land on top of the water and skidded back a few feet. She looks up to see Naruto sprinting towards her still in Sage mode, doing hand seals in a blur and stops at bird. Suiton. Baisuu Suryudan no Jutsu, water style. Multiple water dragon missile technique. Several water dragons rose beside Naruto and ascended towards the vixen who sucked air into her mouth and her stomach expanded a little. On. Renkin, wind release. Drilling air bullet. She shoots a highly compressed air ball from her mouth and it ascends towards the 7 water dragons. Said water dragons explode into water, but Naruto was gone. Natsumi blinked a few times and looks around the area and frowns. She couldn't smell his scent or sense his chakra. That he must be underwater. That sneaky fox. Oh wait, I am one too. She said while sheepishly rubbing the back of her head, and then she reared a fist back and slams it into the surface of the water, causing it to explode and rise all around her. Naruto leaps out of a wave and skids across the water still in Sage mode, does a few hand seals and fires a white fireball that ascends towards Natsumi, while the heat alone made the water steam. Said vixen does a hand seal, and a large wall of water rises in front of her. When the fireball made contact it resulted in steam forming and covering the area. Natsumi stood in the middle of the steam-covered lake. TCH. Figures he would use that jutsu against me since it nullifies my senses, and since he's suppressing his yokai and chakra, I can't sense him nearby. She muttered and then closes her eyes for a few seconds and activates Sage mode. She suddenly spins around performing a backhand strike that was blocked by Naruto, but the impact sends a shock wave that cleared the mist away, and the two were now in a grappling contest, and neither of them was budging. Natsumi snarls and pushes her arms forward, while Naruto smirks and puffs away, surprising the vixen. That was when Naruto appears behind her and wraps one hand around her waist and another around her neck and pulls her underwater. Underwater, Natsumi struggles to get out of Naruto's vice-like grip, trying to pry his hand from her waist and neck, only for the blonde Hanyu to increase his grip and make her gurgle. She then growled and her eyes glowed red. The water started to rise and then explode, and 2 blurs leapt out of the water, crashed into the ground hard, tumbled around a couple of times. And then stop with Natsumi straddling Naruto's waist and trying to strangle him with her hands, while said blonde had his hands around her wrists and struggled to keep her hands away from his neck, but then started to slowly push her hands away and slowly sit up with Natsumi's eyes widening in disbelief. That was when Naruto pushed her and pinned her on her back, pinning her arms over her head and using his body to pin her down. Natsumi struggled for a while, but then stopped and glared at a grinning Naruto. "Do you yield, Sumi-chan?" he asked, and said vixen glared at him for a while, but then sighs. "Yes, I give up now, let me up," she said, irritated, until Naruto leaned down until his face was a few inches close to hers and a blush formed on her face. "Hey, you're too close," she said nervously. "I know, I just wanted to do this," he said, and the next thing she knew, he pressed his lips against hers, making her eyes widen until he deepened it. A moan escaped from her lips and she closed her eyes and returns it. He releases his hold on her wrists, allowing her to wrap her arms around his neck, and he gets back up on his feet, wrapping his arms around her waist and continuing the tongue war for a few more minutes until their lips parted and were trying to regain their breath. "Wow. Where did you learn how to kiss like that?" she asked Naruto, who just smiled. "Ironically, mom left me some books on romance," he answered, which made her raise an eyebrow. "I think she and dad somehow knew we'd get together." "Kinda ironic, huh? You falling for your former vessel who's now a turned hanyo?" he asked cheekily, only for Natsumi to blush and slap him on the shoulder. "Shut up," she said as he let her down. She wrapped her arms around him and rests her head on his chest, while he wraps his arms around her and rests his chin on her forehead for a while and then speaks up. "Hey, let's head back to the compound and get changed since we're both dirty and dripping wet," he stated while she looked up and nodded. She suddenly squeaked out in surprise when he scooped her up in his arms bridal style. "Hey, what are you doing?" she stammered out while he grinned. "Carrying you, of course," he said while her blush grew. "Ibaka. I'm not a damsel, now put me down," she ordered. "I never said you were. I just like carrying you," he stated, which only made her face heat up more and she puffed her cheeks out in mumbles. "Fine, but you have to take a bath with me," she said, grinning while he blushed and sputtered. "What's this? Is the son of the Kairoi Senku afraid of taking a bath with the opposite sex? Don't worry, I won't bite unless you want me to," she teased as she wrapped her arms around his neck, but then she started to giggle and squirm when he started to tickle her sides with his fingers. "Stop it," she begged, and he did, getting a pout from her. "I hate it when you do that," she muttered while he grinned and sunshine to the bathhouse. Bathhouse. Naruto was walking into the private bathhouse clad only in a black towel that covered up his lower body. He makes his way towards the bath, removes his towel, and slips into the water, sighing in relief, and leaned against the edge of the large bath. "Ah, now this feels nice," he says, enjoying how the warm water soothed his body. "I see someone's enjoying their bath," said a feminine voice. Naruto turned his head to see Natsumi wearing a deep red tower around her hurgless body and that he saw her hair fall down to her waist. Naruto on the other hand lets out a wolf whistle. "Hello fox girl." He called out, making her blush while walking into the bath and slowly removing her towel and tossing it aside. Naruto's eyes bugged out and blood dripped from his nose when he saw her in her birthday suit. She on the other hand giggled at this and then soaks into the bath, sighing in content. "Now this is soothing," she said, neck deep in the water while Naruto nodded in agreement. "I have to say, Naruto-kun, you have improved a lot over the last 3 years of your training under me. In my opinion, it was pretty amazing to see someone your age progress like that." Naruto smiled and leaned back into the bath. "That was because I actually had someone train me and not neglect me just because I don't have a special bloodline. Those Uchiha-loving bakas from the village were probably throwing a fit when they found out that their golden boy was dead. I just wish I was there to see the looks on their faces." Natsumi chuckled at this and thought the same thing. "The only good Uchiha in my opinion is a dead one," she said and then scooted over to him, pressing her body against his. Naruto decides to play along and wraps his arm around her while she rested her head on his chest. "You know, for being known as the big bad vixen, you're pretty lax," he stated, which made her smile. "That's because I don't have to worry about power-hungry humans trying to turn me into a weapon," she stated. "You know, not all humans are bad, Natsumi," Naruto stated while she sighed. "I know, but if you had seen half of the things I've seen humans do to each other, then you'd have a change of opinion. Honestly, I've known low-class demons with more sense than they do. They always have to start war over something petty or think they're the superior species," she explained. "Well, you've got me there. But let's not worry about those guys from the elementals. Just like me, you finally have a chance to start a new life without having to keep looking over your shoulder or keeping one eye open at night," he said and kissed her on her forehead. So for the next couple of minutes they took turns washing and teasing each other for a while and then changed into their bed clothes. After eating dinner, they decided to head off into bed. Naruto was resting on the bed wearing a pair of black sweats without a shirt. Natsumi was sleeping on top of him wearing a dark red tank top and a pair of biker shorts that hugged her figure with her head resting on his chest. Naruto had one arm wrapped around her waist and was purring quietly because his other hand was stroking a few of her tails. Morning. The sun rays shined through the window in Naruto and Natsumi's room, and Naruto groaned when the rays hit his closed eyelids, so he turned his head to the side and slowly opened his eyes, only to see Natsumi snoring lightly beside him, with her chest rising and falling slowly. The blonde Hanyo got up and went to take a shower and then get dressed in his ninja guy and make breakfast for him and Natsumi. Natsumi stirred in her sleep and the scent of food being cooked entered her nose. She slowly opened her eyes and sat up to see Naruto gone. She then yawned and stretched her arms out in order to get the kinks out of her body. She hopped out of the bed and saw a note on the dresser. "Hey Natsumi-chan, when you get cleaned up and dressed, head to the dining and join me for breakfast." She then saw a chibi form of Naruto I smiling and grinning while performing a peace sign on the letter and giggled at it. "I swear he's something else," she said and placed the note down and grabbed her clothes, heading to the bathroom to take a shower. Meanwhile, Naruto had just finished making breakfast, which consisted of scrambled eggs, bacon, and French toast, along with 4 glass cups that had orange juice and milk. He was whistling happily while carrying the plate of food at the dining table. Natsumi walked in the room and the delicious aroma entered her nose. "Something smells good and knowing how you cook it's gonna taste fantastic," she said with a grin on her face as she made her way to the table and sat on the opposite side of Naruto and began eating. Afterwards, out of the shadows, a Makusai no Bushin appeared in the room getting a raised eyebrow from them. "I'm guessing the tribunal wishes to see me?" Naruto asked the wooden soldier who nodded. "I'll be there in a sec." The Bunshin nodded and walked backwards, merging with the shadows. "You ready?" he asked Natsumi who nodded. He placed a hand on her shoulder and vanished in a swirl of fire. Lap of the gods. In a swirl of fire, Naruto and Natsumi appeared in the monastery before the 4 ninjutsu masters who were sitting on their thrones. "Welcome back to the lap of the gods, Naruto," Natsumi. Khan spoke. "I take it his training and your version of the ninja arts is complete." Kiyomi nodded at the ninjutsu master of the spirit. "That is an impressive feat for one so young." Judo exclaimed while Naruto looked sheepish and rubbed the back of his head. "Thanks for the praise, Judo Shisho, but even though I completed my training under her, I still have much to learn and I'll still train to fully master the arts I learned under her tutelage." The blonde replied while she blushes at the praise he gave her. The others nodded their heads in agreement. "A wise decision. You never know your true limits until you've fully mastered what you've learned," Chikara stated. "Now then sit. We have much to discuss." Naruto did so and sat on one of the mats Indian style. "As we discussed 3 years ago, an ancient evil that we have sealed away for over a millennia threatens to return. You along with the other chosen must be ready to face this being of destruction." Judo stated. He can wreak untold destruction through both physical and spiritual means, and you must be able to face it at all costs. He finished in a serious tone. That was when Khan stood up and performed a small series of hand seals and stopped at the Tori seal. A blue orb formed in his palms and he aimed it at Naruto. A golden orb formed in front of his chest and surprised the blonde Hanyo until the glow died down in the form of a golden amulet that have 9 tomo surrounding the dragon symbol. That Naruto is the amulet of the acolyte. It will aid you to focus and amplify your inner power, your Kai. Khan stated while Naruto examined it and looked back up. What do you mean by Kai? Naruto asked Khan. Like your chakra, Yaki, and Senjutsu chakra, Kai is a tangible energy that lives inside every being, with its major focus being in the center of the body. By drawing it out, a person is able to use it in many ways, but in order to use your Kai properly, you must possess a heightened form both physically, mentally, and spiritually as well as absolute focus. If completely mastered, then the user is capable of accomplishing anything. The Master of Spirit explained. Wow. Now that seems interesting to learn. Is that how you became masters in ninjutsu? Naruto asked and they nodded. Yes, and under our tutelage you too can become a great ninjutsu master. Chikara stated as she stood up and did a few hand seals like Khan did earlier. That was when a flash of light formed behind Naruto and he turned around to see what appeared to be a large door and stood up. She slowly opened her palms and the door opened. Naruto's eyes widened and he along with Natsumi walked into the room and his eyes bugged out. "Aw, come on," Naruto said lowly while Natsumi smirked as the place appeared to be a rather large library filled with countless reading. "I have to go through studying on books again." Natsumi chuckled at how he was acting and a sigh escapes from his lips. Well, whoever said knowledge was power really meant it. He then did the crisscross seal and 100 Kage Bunshins appeared in the room. "Alright guys, grab a book and get to reading," he instructed and they all proceeded to make their way through the library. A few minutes later the clones were reading and slowly dispersing while Naruto was sitting in the middle of the room in the lotus position with his eyes closed, slowly gaining the knowledge the clones passed on to their user. "Interesting," Naruto stated while Natsumi was in her kid form curled up in his lap. A book based on focus and energy but physically manifesting it. Naruto was unaware of the amulet glowing, but Natsumi's ears shot up and she opened her eyes as she felt an odd energy emitting from Naruto. It explains about how to express your Kai energy at sheer force of will. As a golden outline of aura formed around him, strange golden patterns did as well. Natsumi looked up and her eyes widened when she saw the markings on Naruto's. Naruto-kun," Natsumi called out. Said blonde opened his eyes and looks at his hands and arms and his eyes widened. "Wow. Did I just awaken my Kai?" Naruto asked as the patterns and Kai aura dissipate on his person. "Apparently so," Natsumi stated, eye smiling at her student boyfriend. "You've definitely got talent, Naruto-kun." Naruto eye smiled back and got back on his feet. "Well, of course I do since I take after my parents," he said while stroking her behind her back and getting a purr from her. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.